Hey, I called this meeting of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on June 12th, 2018 at 5 o'clock p.m. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Let the record show that trustees Carbone, Murphy, Berry, Botkin, and Decker are present. And I haven't heard from Floyd or Mr. Gooden, so hopefully they're on their way. All right, we are going to move into. Everything's working? Okay, Sean?
It's not now. Thanks, Sean.
Appreciate
Did you break it?
you okay, Sean? Okay,
You need somebody to come fix it for you, Sean? Childproof.
everything's working? Okay, so we're gonna move into public comment. This is the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 5 minutes to speak on his or her issue. Because of topic posting requirements of the Open Meetings Act, board members will not ask questions of the patron and will not answer any questions posed to the board by the patron. No action can be taken on any issues presented during the patron comment segment of the board meeting. Patrons addressing the board will be notified when they're approaching the last 30 seconds of their allotted time to speak. Okay, Mr. Fulis.
Thank you. You guys hear regularly from me on a single issue, and I'll be getting back to that in the future, but today I'd like to pause and take a moment to reflect on some things that we all agree on. I think it's good to remind each other that we're not just here to engage in contests. If we get too accustomed to that, then the desire to win starts getting in the way of a goal that we all share, which is doing the best thing for the students of Pearland ISD, for their education, and for their futures. Last month's meeting was the best I've ever attended. Different perspectives were offered by multiple board members on a variety of issues, and it appeared to me that the decisions made were better because of it. I have to admit that my expectations were low when the presentation on start times began. I saw no question in the survey on how tired our high school students are during the day, even though that seemed to be a central issue. Groups that would only have their schedules disrupted by a change and would see no personal benefit, such as teachers and students in lower grades, were included in the survey, and high school student responses were given the least weight in the report. When Ms. Holt spoke about Dawson, she reluctantly mentioned that 90% of her students wouldn't mind starting earlier, but that was glossed over as we listened to the many logistical reasons why changing start times would be difficult to do. But then Lance Botkin decided to point out that the most important consideration of all, which had been completely left out thus far, and was the whole point of looking at start times in the first place, was that we're concerned about the welfare of our students. We've had a lot of suicide attempts this year. Parents are worried that their teens are too stressed out and that lack of sleep is contributing to that. Lance pointed out that just putting our teens to bed earlier isn't the answer. Even when we can accomplish it and they're in bed early, they aren't sleeping. I can testify that is 100% true. I was very strict about bedtimes in my house, and that worked fine all the way up until high school. After that, it was a constant battle, and the kids easily won. There's way too much social pressure on teenagers for them to get to sleep early, and the older they are, the worse it gets. They might be in bed, but they aren't sleeping until it gets late. The board decided to look into this issue further, and that was absolutely the right decision. During the public comments, Buck Stevens, a local conservative, got up and made suggestions about school safety. I think everyone knows by now that my political views tend to be on the progressive side, so Buck and I often disagree, but there are still a few issues left that can transcend all that. He suggested that one way to make schools safer would be to get rid of backpacks altogether. This actually echoed a sentiment that I heard from parents when I was block walking before the election. My biggest challenge in buying my kids backpacks was always finding one big enough to hold all their books. I was shocked that those kids had to lug those things around all day since there's no longer enough time between class to use lockers. All textbooks are going online nowadays, so why not get rid of the physical copies? I know it's not something that can be done overnight. Each kid will need access to a tablet or some kind of device for reading, but I don't want the idea to get lost. because it has too many benefits: increasing school safety, improving the students' grasp of technology, eliminating problems due to forgotten books, eliminating the need to distribute and collect books. The list goes on. Maybe we can even phase out all those empty lockers someday. Finally, I want to say that Dr. Kelly's blog post on school safety quite rightly laments the fact that our schools are coming to resemble prisons more and more due to the unfortunate reality of mass shootings. It is my sincere hope that the solutions we find can strike some kind of balance between keeping our schools safe and still trusting and respecting our kids. That's why I like the no backpack idea so much, because it both keeps them safer and makes their lives easier. I also want to say that I strongly support the board's previous decision not to entertain the idea of arming teachers. I would urge you not to revisit that question, even though it's included in the governor's recent list of suggestions. Aside from still being unfunded by the state, as far as I know, we have to remember one inescapable fact: more guns in schools will mean more gun deaths in schools. In the few districts that allow teachers to carry, we've already seen incidents where guns were left in bathrooms and found by students, where students managed to get guns owned by others and fired them, where a teacher accidentally shot a student while doing a safety demonstration, and even where a teacher was shooting a gun himself. In addition to the danger to our children and the legal liability and the new burden would be placing on our teachers, please consider that there would be numerous Pearland parents that would demand that their kids not be placed in the classroom with a gun in it. Complying with those requests and moving the kids would be a tremendous logistical burden. I can't think of any better example of a can of worms that would be better left unopened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulis. Okay, Miss Sarah May? May, M-A-Y.
Hi, my name is Sarah May, and I live in Silver Lake. I am a resident of Pearland ISD. I have 2 children who will be at Silvercrest Elementary next year, and my oldest starts at Rogers next year. I want to thank you for your time tonight and for all that you do for Pearland ISD. I'm here because there has been a lot of talk about arming teachers and staff, and I want to make it clear that the community does not want that to happen here. In response to the horrific shooting in Santa Fe, Governor Abbott released his School and Firearm Safety Action Plan for Texas school districts, including the expansion of the School Marshal Plan, which allows teachers or other staff to carry guns inside schools. For the safety of our students and educators, we urge Pearland ISD not to adopt the School Marshal Plan. Guns do not belong in schools, which are meant to be places of sanctuary, safety, and learning for children. The presence of guns at schools adds an unpredictable element that puts educators and students at risk and layers even more safety concerns on top of the heavy responsibilities already placed on teachers. There is no evidence that arming teachers will make schools safer. Arming civilians is not an effective way to stop active shooters. Law enforcement officers are extensively trained to handle the chaos and dynamics of an active shooter situation. Civilians are not. Out of 160 active shooter incidents, the FBI found only 1 successful armed civilian intervention, and that civilian was a trained U.S. Marine. The notion that a teacher with less training would hit an active shooter is unrealistic, and there is a risk of unintended injuries to students and staff in the midst of the chaos. Research indicates the presence of a gun at school makes children less safe. Students may know where teachers keep firearms and obtain access. Irrespective of age, access to a firearm triples the risk of death by suicide and doubles the risk by homicide. If teachers and other employees carry more guns into schools, we can expect tragic accidents. In March, a Northern California teacher and reserve police officer accidentally fired a gun inside a classroom, injuring at least 1 student. Other reports include school employees accidentally leaving guns unattended in bathrooms where they were found by students or parents. Experts in education and law enforcement agree that more guns in schools can increase volatility and risk. The American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, and the Major Cities Chiefs Association have expressed opposition to arming teachers. Liability insurers also recognize the increased risks and often to refuse coverage or raise premiums for schools that allow employees to carry guns. If lawmakers want to prevent school shootings, they must adopt proactive, common-sense solutions to prevent people with dangerous histories from obtaining guns in the first place. One way we can save lives is to support red flag laws, which Governor Abbott also recommends in his plan. Research shows that in at least 42% of mass shootings, the attacker exhibited dangerous warning signs before the shooting. Red flag laws allow loved ones and law enforcement to petition a court to have a person's access to guns temporarily restricted when they are found to be a threat to themselves or others. A red flag law would empower them to intervene before a shooter arrives at the schoolhouse door. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ms. May. Melissa Zalembo?
Being a Zalimbo is difficult because those of you who know that last name are probably cringing right now, wondering what I'm going to say. But I'm here today to say that we are slow to praise and quick to criticize, and so indulge me for a moment as I congratulate some of the people who have demonstrated successes for my children in this district. Beginning with Miss Ruth Mondich in Life Skills at Shady Crest, she lit a spark in me that came to be the mama grizzly bear that I am today. I fight very, very hard for the rights and services of my children. My daughter Liana is autistic and my son is required special handling. And we wish to thank your entire staff for all the support and extra effort that went into educating Liana and Dominic this year. So many people have been involved that we cannot possibly thank them all, and we don't even know who they are. We hope that this few minutes will make its way to those who we may not know who have been instrumental. Some of you have heard these words before via email, but I wanted to say them publicly. Before this year, we had no clear vision into Liana's capabilities or future. Due to the ceaseless dedication of the people working with Liana that began in 7th grade year, we now see hope and future and a possibility of an independent life. And how could we ask for more than that? The supportive baseline upon which our strategies were built was through the amazing evaluation of Liana's skills and deficits, which was instrumental to our strategies, and that eval was done by none other than Crystal Carbone, who walked us through and helped us understand where we were starting. We especially want to thank Miss Amy Hale, who has maintained a constant stream of communication that allowed us to know when things are going sideways so we could quickly course correct. We appreciate the endless hours that Ms. Cerrone and other aides have spent with Liana to ensure that her behavior does not interfere with her learning. Thank you to Ms. Fitzgerald, who has been by our side these many years as we tried strategies to get Liana's behavior under control. She has often been the object of my anger, upset, and disappointment, and she has always handled it with grace, and I appreciate that. We emphatically applaud the school and the district for your emphasis on behavior management and the hiring of Nancy Kling. We all in this community needed that. I'm certain that we will make a difference for generations to come, and it is worth the investment that you've chosen to make in behavior management. We think that you all have proven quite clearly that when Liana's behavior is managed properly, her capacity to learn is without question. After spending many years in Life Skills, it is glorious to see her in regular classrooms interacting with her typical peers. We look forward to continuing the behavior management plans and actions that have worked in the past, as well as trying new strategies with independence in mind. As Liana joins a larger group of students next year, there will surely be new challenges, and I am confident that we will handle them together. There will be new behavior difficulties, and we'll handle those together. We feel confident that the staff that is in place together, we can remove the even more barriers that Liana has, and we can do all that we can to ensure that she is the most fully formed human being that she is capable of being. Please pass along our devout thanks to those we do not know who show Liana endless kindnesses as she learns how to navigate a typical world as a fully functioning and contributing adult. And to all of you, we say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Limbo. think I'm going to say your last name wrong. Hedja Tapur, is that right? Hayapur, sorry.
It's okay, it's close enough. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the PISD School Board. Thank you for allotting this time to hear from the citizens of Pearland. My name is Lita Hidayatpour. I am 19 years old and went through Pearland's educational institutions for 11 years. I attended Carlston Elementary, Massey Ranch Elementary, Sam Jameson Middle School, Pearland Junior High South, and Pearland High School. Currently, I attend the University of Houston. I've experienced many firsthand issues in the way school policy is handled on an administrative level, but today I would like to address one specific problem that is lacking in our curriculum: comprehensive sex education. I never received anything from Pearland schools in terms of sex ed. The closest thing I had was in the 6th grade when my PE coach brought a TV into the library and showed an outdated VHS tape about puberty. The video was about a girl who was spending the night at her friend's house when she started her period for the first time. Her friend's mother congratulated her and proceeded to use pancake batter to vaguely depict a uterus while describing how periods worked. My brother, who is 4 years older than I am, recalled having to take a health course as a requirement for graduation at PHS when he attended. However, the Texas Board of Education removed the health course as a requirement before I attended high school. However, even when my brother took this health course, sex ed was not taught. I cannot stress how much this conversation should not be one that is left to be discussed at home because it isn't discussed at home enough. According to a nationwide study reported by the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation in 2002, 51% of teens between the ages of 15 to 17 had discussed with their parents how to know when you're ready to have sex. 43% of teens had discussed with their parents how to talk to a boyfriend or girlfriend about sexual health issues, such as pregnancy, birth control, and STIs. 52% of teens had discussed condoms with their parents. Of this number, 49% had discussed other forms of contraception. 56% of teens had discussed HIV/AIDS with their parents. 50% of teens had discussed STIs with their parents. As for myself, I never spoke to my parents about sex, let alone contraceptives, and neither did my school on a topic that should be considered publicly accessible information. This absence of information to future generations of adults contributes to our alarming national statistics. Texas is ranked 3rd in the nation for teen pregnancy after New Mexico and Mississippi. Dallas News reported that Texas has the highest rate of repeat teen pregnancy in the country. The National Center for Health Statistics shows that 42% of girls and 44% of boys between 15 to 19 have already had sex. In other words, almost 1 in every 2 students in high school have had sex. To make matters more dire, 53% of boys and 66% of girls say that a condom is not always used during intercourse, as reported by NBC News. For the purposes of this issue, I am standing not as an advocate for any political party. The overall health, future, and well-being of Pearland's young adults should always be addressed as a nonpartisan issue. Also, I am not the sole individual in agreement to add a course like this. The Scripps Research Center in Abilene called 1,000 Texans in a random telephone survey and were asked, quote, "More than 80,000 Texas teenagers become pregnant every year. Do you favor or oppose teaching public school students with age-appropriate, medically accurate sex education that includes information on abstinence, birth control, and prevention of sexually transmitted diseases and HIV? 90% were in favor, 6% opposed, 1% was neutral, 2% said depends what age, 1% wasn't sure. A sex ed course needs to be implemented and done correctly. The curriculum must have relevant, medically accurate facts with unbiased viewpoints. I know that abstinence would be required as part of the curriculum in Texas, and with reason. Abstinence is a perfectly respectable choice, however, not everyone will choose the path of abstinence, as I previously addressed. Finally, sex ed will help lower abortion rates by having students understand the various methods of contraception and how to properly use them in order to prevent unwanted pregnancies. The preventative measure of sex ed can reduce the spread of STDs, lower teen pregnancy rates, have students understand the risks involved, and can address the importance behind consent and how to obtain it. To conclude, I would like to say that much of the subject information that I've learned in high school, I will not use as much as a subject like comprehensive sex ed, an invaluable topic that will forever be relevant for the rest of my life. As a pre-law honors undergrad attending the University of Houston, if I decide to run for office or the PISD school board, profound changes will be made in education. I care about the future of young adults, and I know that school should be a place of learning and growth. I implore you not to leave your students in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. That concludes our public comment. The Board of Trustees of the Pearland Independent School District will adjourn into closed session at 5:20 p.m. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. The board will reconvene in open session at 6:23 p.m. No action was taken in closed session. Do we want to do motions?
Hey, the folder's right there in my chair.
Yeah.
Mike, you have the motion?
Are we playing musical chairs? What's happening?
Madam President, I move that we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation for employment of personnel as presented.
Okay,
Second.
so we have a motion made by Mr. Floyd and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-4, 0 against. Okay, we're gonna move to, you don't want to do the, we'll do. Okay, we're gonna open remarks.
Can you do opening remarks real
Yes,
quick?
and then we'll move to,
Please stand for the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Please remain standing for a brief prayer. I just want to say, Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for our administrators, our teachers, and our students most of all. Keep them safe over the summer. Get them well prepared and well rested for a new and upcoming school year. Protect their families if they're traveling, and make sure that keep our veterans safe and sound. In Jesus' name we pray.
okay, sorry. This is board recognition, so this is our favorite time.
Today. Good evening. Pearland Independent School District is home to some of the most talented students in the state of Texas, and now comes the time that the board loves to recognize those students for their achievements. Parents, feel free to come up and take photos at any time. Tonight, we're proud to honor students who achieved the top honor, grand recognition, in the 2017-18 Duke University Talent Identification Program. Grand recognition honorees scored at or above 680 in math and 670 in evidence-based reading and writing on the SAT. On the ACT, students earning grand recognition must score at or above 31 in English, 29 in math, 31 in reading, and 28 in science, or a composite score of 28 or above. From Pearland Junior High South, we have Cameron Short. And from Pearland Junior High West, we have Eric Quee.
You get a picture of her, baby? Come hither.
As in there?
Come on, guys. Spread out. Thanks, guys. Congratulations. Good work. Good game. Good job.
Congratulations, gentlemen. Next, we recognize students who excelled at the State Future Problem Solvers Competition. This program stimulates critical and creative thinking skills, encourages students to develop futuristic vision, and prepares them for leadership roles. From Pearland Junior High West, Cordelia Lee, who placed first in Middle Division of Global Issues Problem Solving. And from Sablatura Middle School, Anna Lee, who placed first in the Junior Division of Global Issues Problem Solving, and Anna is coached by Judy Sisk.
Thank you very much. Picture. Picture. Oh,
Careful.
easy. That'd been a great picture. All right, congratulations. Thank you.
Now we'd like to recognize some high school students who excelled in their athletic fields. First, these student athletes soared to new heights in track and field this year. From Dawson High School, placing first at the regional track meet in discus and second in shot put and qualifying for state is Crystal Herpin. Also from Dawson, placing first in the regional track meet in 100 meter, qualifying him for state, Jacoby Shelton. And both of these student athletes are coached by Troy Myers. She's like, I'm tall.
He got it, he got it.
Thank you. That concludes our recognition this evening. Congratulations to all our students.
Public hearing for the taxes. We're gonna do the public hearing, and then we'll go back after the public hearing. Hey, Mike. All right, so we're gonna discuss number 8 on the agenda, which is the budget and proposed tax rate, and then
It's on regular.
that's the public hearing. So we have, if we have people who would like to speak, right?
Yes, ma'am. Depending on your wishes, board, we can first ask if there's anybody here who wishes to speak about the budget and the taxes, and then delay the formal presentation until later in the agenda when we do budget and taxes.
Or we can talk
Or
about the
we can
budget
do
right
it all
now.
up front, however you wish.
Are there any members in the audience that would like to ask questions or make comments
With regard to the
with regard
budget
to the budget
or the tax rate.
or the tax rate?
So it's Sean.
Any people? No participants?
Hearing none?
Okay, hearing none, then this hearing, the public hearing is closed. It was opened at 6:30, it's closed at 6:31,
Yes.
okay? All right, so do you guys want to go back, and then we'll come back out for the budget? Okay. So we are going to re-adjourn into closed session at 6:32. No voting will take place. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session.
For the purposes of, for the audience, in case you're interested, we'll be in there for a while. We want to discuss safety and security measures that are obviously executive session confidential matters. So I estimate 20 to 30 minutes on that before we come out and do the remainder of the agenda.
At 7:43 PM, no action was taken in closed session. Is there any motions? Consent agenda?
Just jumping right into it, aren't you? I'm mousing.
Yeah, mine is too.
I don't know if he's-
Do we make a motion?
Um,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion made by Mr. Murphy and a second by Mr. Botkin. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-4, and one stepped out, Ms. Carbone. Okay, the motion carries. Let's do, what do you want to do?
Sorry, guys.
Foundation, so Natalie can leave.
Wait, hold on, we got questions. Y'all come back.
We could hold off on the budget and the tax rate and do the other ones first?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So, Madam President, item B3, which is considered to approve the selection of architect firm to provide architectural services for the 2016 bond package E.
Yes, sir. That's up to
John Posh, take it away.
Mr. Posh.
So on the first package, we went through the process and the RFQ process, and of course, we have PBK and Stantec. Both of them have been doing an excellent job. So when we looked at who to go with for this final package E, which is basically some renovations and PE additions at the elementary schools, relatively small project, we looked to see, considered both of them. And I think what it came down to really is in the first go-round, PBK had the highest score, Stantec was second. So we figured that was the most objective way to make the decision for this package. So that was part of our recommendation. The other one, of course, is Jeff Chapman with the project architect with PBK has really done an excellent job for us, and we thought that gave us a good measure of confidence in what PBK can do.
Any questions, board?
No.
Package E, what does that include again?
It's
Overview.
elementary schools, so it's PE additions at four elementary schools, some interior renovations, and then cafeteria and gym, small addition at Lawhon, and
Shady Crest.
a new entrance at Shady Crest is another.
Total of
part
6
that. So
elementaries, 4 new gyms, 2 other projects.
Shady Crest and Lawhon.
Lawhon. Mhm.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve the selection of PBK Architects to provide architectural services for 2016 bond package E, and that the superintendent or his designee be authorized to execute the final contract and any other necessary documents on behalf of the school district.
Second.
So I have a motion made by Mr. Berry and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion?
Where's PBK, that our buddy, besides Jim, the guy I really like?
Where's Jeff?
Where's he at?
Phil, that's Phil.
I don't know if Phil.
No,
Where's the
Jeff
other
had a
guy?
conflict tonight.
He's
Jeff,
not
where's
here tonight.
Jeff had a conflict tonight, but he sent his assistant Phil.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I will. Can we discuss this a little further?
No.
Jeff's not here. I'm just kidding.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-4, against.
Sorry that took so long.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
He's used to it.
The TASB delegate.
Yes, Madam President, as you know, you've experienced in this, that
Yes.
we need a primary and an alternate for the TASB Delegate Assembly. I don't remember, is the dates
Don't-
for that in
everybody's
there
here
on
tonight.
page 99?
Yes, September 28th through the 30th.
Darn it.
Okay. So, need a primary and an alternate.
Everybody's here tonight, so we can't.
I know.
Can we keep it the same?
Sean, did you enjoy being a delegate?
I don't think he knew what he's doing.
I mean, I'm going to,
I voted that they give board members a raise.
you did?
This is the one that was in
In
Dallas. correct?
Dallas, yes. Where you
So
at?
if we're, yeah, I mean, I'm fine leaving it the same if you,
Go with that?
Jeff wants to be.
Will you attend?
Yeah, they're attending in Dallas, right?
I'd like to
Actually,
make
it's
a
in
mo-
Austin this year.
Yes, it's in Austin. I'd like to make a motion that the board appoint Mr. Murphy as the delegate and Mr. Barry as the alternate.
Are you declining?
As be delegate
Loose alternate.
assembly.
Second.
So I have a motion made by Mr. Gooden and a second by Mr. Floyd. Any further discussion?
So it's Murphy and Barry, is that what we're looking at?
Yeah. Thank you for your service, gentlemen. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
You abstaining?
The motion carries 7-4-0 against. Okay, next one is the Pearland ISD Education Foundation.
Madam President, we,
Yes.
according to the bylaws, we have one board member who sits on the foundation board. And so I know Rebecca is our most recent, and she has expressed a willingness to me to continue serving. There may be others.
I'm going to remove my name from the hat as my husband's already a board member, and I feel like it would be a location of effort. Conflict of interest. I don't know.
No, but
Somebody's got to watch the kids. I mean, let's be
appreciate
honest.
that.
No,
No, I actually would like to continue to serve, so if that's not a problem for the rest of the board. All
I'd like
right,
to make a motion
okay.
that the board.
Let's ask
appoints-
Natalie.
Oh, yeah, is
How
is
did
there a
she do?
review? Natalie, do you have
Is
a
she an
review?
asset to the foundation, Natalie?
Thank you.
All right.
I've had an issue.
Yeah, send
last
us the
couple months.
attendance records
You
and maybe an
pass.
evaluation tool. Anyway, the board, I would move that the board appoint Rebecca Decker to serve as the trustee on the Pearland ISD Education Foundation Board of Directors.
Second that.
Okay, so I have a motion made by Mr. Gooden and a second by Ms. Carbone. Any further discussion?
I want a progress report every 9 weeks.
You know what? I need to do
For an
that. I was
alternate,
not,
Brian?
I didn't,
We'll put you on it.
I need to do that.
Oh, no,
And I
I'll do
will
it.
do that.
Can't have more than one
No,
president.
no, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries 7-4-0 against. And then the next
Yes.
is the consideration of public and student workshops.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
wanna-
Madam President, members of the board, trustees have asked for more interaction with the public, talked about the possibility of a workshop, it's been described by some, or public participation opportunity where there's a back and forth with the public on the daily school start times and other issues of general interest to the public. And then in a similar vein, at least one trustee has suggested student advisory meetings whereby high school and junior high students give their perspectives to trustees, administration on relevant board level policies. My recommendation is that you don't hold any of those meetings before mid-September in 2018. Give us a chance to get the year started. But if I understood correctly, the previous boards or the board's previous words on this, they would like the opportunity, I guess, to persuade the public on the school start times or have community interaction. That to me sounds like 2 meetings in the fall, because as Rebecca has pointed out, if school start times were to change, that decision probably needs to be made no later than January of 2019. So I see perhaps 2 workshops / public forum type things for the students start school times and any other issues that the board might want to also put on there. And then at least 1 student advisory committee meeting in the fall. Jeff is the one that suggested some of that. And what that could be like is that we invite student council representatives from the high schools and maybe even one from each of the junior highs to meet with the board. Well, my only caution on that particular thing is keep it at the board level on policy rather than, I don't like that my school lunch starts at 11
No,
rather than
looking at our board
11:05
policy,
or
correct.
something.
No, I think that's perfect.
So are we talking about doing both at the same time?
No, no, no.
Okay.
So,
We have-
after reading through this, I was actually thinking, and because September is so crazy with, all the school open, the meet the teacher nights and things like that, that if we do the workshop with the public based on the school start times, and there might be some other topic that we're also discussing, we have that at the beginning of October-ish, And then the following one would be in November, like before we go on Thanksgiving break. That way that we could make a decision, still have some time to discuss it and that kind of stuff, and then have the decision made by January board meeting.
So, oh, go ahead.
And then the student meeting, I was thinking to have either in, like around December, to give us some time, the kids to be in school. But if you think we need to have that earlier, I'm certainly up for that.
So
We
I'm
didn't really talk, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm not going on directly on that, but you know, with these, I kind of pushed for this early on. You know, just to open up and educate our parents, and a lot of parents and they don't understand what the school district goes through. So now I say educate's the wrong word, but just inform them of all the great things that we're doing and possible the struggles that we do have with budget and different things. So this, I don't like to call it a workshop because it seems so town hall meetings or whatever you want to call them, but whatever the topics are, we could discuss it in this point forward. You know, have them. My thought was to have them 3 times a year, and you do it at each one of the high schools.
Well, I think that's a different, I mean,
This is different than that, or
well,
what are
no,
we
I
talking
mean,
about?
we can segue those into that. I mean,
Okay,
but I'm thinking
fair
that
enough.
the school start time, because we need to make the decision by January,
Okay,
we need to make sure that that topic is discussed.
okay, no,
And then in the spring, we can have more.
I got you. Fair enough. And so what we're saying is we're going to start the process of having these open
Correct.
discussions. I'd say open discussion, but informative meetings where we actually go
Right.
to, not here, but we actually go, hey, it's going to be at Pearland High School or Turner or Dawson, and this is what we're discussing, and, you know,
Right, and I also, I mean, I know that there are differing views, even sitting on the board, when it comes to the school start time. So I wanted to see if all of us were going to be involved in this meeting, because if that is the case, then we're gonna have to post it. Or if it was just gonna be 3, you know, those kind of things. So
Is the purpose of the meeting informative to the public, or is it a persuasive meeting?
Yeah.
both.
That's the question. Okay, so both as in we would present our arguments for or against a start time to,
And then just field questions and answer, and you know,
Right.
and I'm gonna ask some staff members as well, because there's obviously gonna be some questions that we aren't, you know, on the know of, but that they can shed some light on that.
and so
So
administration will be there to offer the feasible reality of.
right,
you know,
we might have transportation
Right.
involved, and because I want this to be
exactly.
a discussion.
I'm in.
So my question is, if we're gonna do it as a workshop, I prefer we host it out here
No,
publicly.
yeah,
recorded.
absolutely. But I don't want it. I mean, I want it to be approachable,
Interactive.
interactive.
That's
so
fine.
that
Yeah,
yeah.
I just don't wanna have it,
Set chairs in the front or
We
something
could.
like that. Something
could
that
absolutely do
offers
that.
a different.
What do you say? You wouldn't want to go to the high schools?
we're talking about the workshop for school start times specifically.
Well,
I think
okay.
you're talking about 2 different things.
Well, the way the way,
Support, I don't support going out and hosting a campaign in support of.
No, I'm not
school
saying,
start
I never
times.
said
Right.
campaign.
No,
I'm
we're
supportive,
having-
if you wanna hold a workshop to discuss it,
we're going to discuss it and have and
have the
invite
public,
yes,
then I'll s-
invite the
that's
public
fine.
to.
I just
yes.
wanna have it out here, not in.
Yeah.
No, I
where
agree.
we normally hold our
I
closed
think
session.
I agree too, Sean, because if it was held at the high schools, it might be perceived as this is a high school question, where in reality it's a K through 12 question.
Right.
And then those other meetings that
We
we
hold
talk
one
about.
in like
okay,
a
so
middle
those-
school or.
That's what I'm looking. Okay, so
well, I
we're-
mean, are we gonna,
bounce
are we
around.
gonna, so let me wrap my head around this.
Okay.
So the way it was posed in this agenda item
Mm-hmm.
is that they wanted to have a workshop or public participation opportunity focused on daily school start times and other issues of general interest. So it doesn't necessarily have to be focused on daily, on start times.
No, but that's
Yeah,
going to
but
be
there should
on the
be an
next. If the
ongoing-
first 2, that yeah,
So
we're
it
going to
should
have
be
that.
an ongoing, it should be
Yes,
an ongoing
yes.
set meeting.
Yes.
Like every 3 months or something like that. I mean,
Yes.
I'm all for having a workshop every 2 or 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
you know, inviting the public in to have an open conversation about, you know, kind of some of the issues that they perceive in the district. But that's kind of what started my focus on the students, right?
Right.
You know, I was talking to Ted Frick one day and I said, hey, you know, why don't we just bring a bunch of you guys in, and you get all your student council presidents or your class presidents or whatever, and we can have an open conversation about what the students are seeing. You know, how do the students perceive their day to day?
Right.
And then there is no agenda. It's just an open and honest conversation about what they think about what's going on.
My only concern with it being limited to the ESC is just location.
Right.
Right. I mean, it took me like 45 minutes to get here. You know, I mean, I don't know what
No, I
time
agree.
what time it
I-
would be,
I
but you
do.
know, if we did one at Challenger and then one at Lawhon, or
Yeah,
that's what I think. But I don't know if that's relevant to the student meeting. I think those are two different
No.
things.
Yeah, those are
Right.
two separate
Or
things.
maybe
right?
just a neutral place. We could get the chamber or somebody to host us, or
And we have another contact. We have
Yeah.
someone designated to be the leader.
But I think you need to make a decision if you're going to workshop this particular subject, because this particular subject is going to draw a ton of attention, a ton of people here. It's going to take a lot of time. So I don't particularly think you're going to have a lot more time to
talk about
discuss
other
anything
issues.
else.
That's why I was
And
thinking
if you let
thi-
everyone
this
get up here
fall-
and you let everyone just talk
Right,
and talk
Sean.
and talk, you're going to get
Yes.
off topic. So
No.
I think
That's
you
why
need to
this
look
fall
at this
I'm
subject.
looking at this subject. And then
Right.
if we're wanting to do other interests, which I want to be able to do that, we can do that in the spring. But we have to, because this decision needs to be made by January.
Well, and I do apologize that I had to step out of the last meeting when this topic came up, but we've had so much information regarding school start time. You know, I don't think we can dispute that there's some sort of physiological advantage for the kids and their learning abilities and things of that sort. But in my opinion, the public has spoken. I mean, they reported on our survey 60-some-odd% of all the people that responded said they were against it. So
Great.
why are we gonna
But I
why
think if you-
are we gonna force this down their throat?
But Jeff,
You weren't here for that whole discussion,
but-
Jeff.
Yeah,
that's,
It was,
well,
a-
just
it was,
give me
You
the
missed
cliff
all that.
notes
it was a
then.
really long discussion.
missed that because they really would have boiled down to, Jeff, and I'll say it again, is that they were voting against their elementary kids getting
Yeah.
on the bus at 6:05 a.m. That's all they were
And that's
presented.
what-
They were presented two different things. Do the high school kids go to school early, or the elementary? If you look at the survey, that's what they're presented, and
I don't wanna
that's
bring
where
that
that
whole
we had
thing
this
back
open
up.
discussion.
Okay.
What Jeff's saying is, again, if you want to bring this discussion up, your only other option is to change that time.
Absolutely.
$8 million in transportation.
No,
costs.
But we haven't looked at all those.
We haven't
That's
looked at all
what
that.
these
That's
meetings
what
are
we're talking
for.
about. We haven't
That's
looked
what
at all
those
that.
meetings are for.
We haven't looked up.
Well, again, it's something we're continuing to talk about, but if we're going to workshop it, I mean, we need to have concrete data and numbers again, and not continue to drag this on.
It's not gonna be an opinion
Well,
thing.
and so were there action items as a result of the last meeting for administration to go back and get so that we can make a final decision on that? Or we're just gonna have another 2-hour conversation about talking about it and then
They'll be specific.
and then ask them to go run off and do stuff and then come back. So we're doing this 3 more times.
well, the criticism, and it may have been valid, is that we overlooked some option that might work for a lot of people. And so if we're going to discuss this in the fall, then I think I'd be asking our people in advance to kind of look at some of the overlooked options, as some people claimed there were. I guess that's what we would do. My advice to Rebecca this whole time is, if you want to keep this issue alive, then the effort is to persuade. If things remain the way they are right now, you're in a very difficult place to change school start times. But if through workshops you can change public opinion, then maybe.
But,
So
what was
we were
decided is that all options were needed to be looked at. Transportation, cost, everything.
I know, but those were presented at the last meeting and the last board
Or
package.
not.
They were,
The only
I
thing-
saw it somewhere. I
The
just didn't
only thing
dream
that
it.
was presented was the survey.
And it was a specific
Not
survey
true.
to 3.
They had the 3 different categories of shuffling all the different start times for elementary, junior high, and high school.
But at the start
Survey.
times
For
we had,
3 charts.
Survey.
But Sean, Jeff,
Very specific.
but it was the start times we have right now.
So they're
On the
just
3
shuffling
tiers.
them around.
No,
So, yes.
no, they just shuffled. You're right.
Exactly.
They
They
just shuffled
swapped
them.
elementary for
Exactly.
high
That was the
school
survey,
or
Jeff.
whatever.
That's-
That's the numbers. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's where it, like Goose Creek ISD, right? 3 high schools, they just changed theirs, and they said that those schools could start before 7:30, and their high school starts at 8:30. Okay,
They're working out the logistics now.
they're working out the logistics period, and it's going to cost them a little bit more money, but you know, they're working it out. They're working backwards. They're working from what we
Making
want
a
to look like
and
to
then
the
making it happen.
beginning. And that's all I ever asked.
Look
Let's
at the
exhaust every
options.
option.
So I guess administration is going to provide us all the costs associated with those different options at this
That-
workshop.
And then we will have I think that there's several board members that have information too that can contribute, so.
I'm sure.
But we're looking at,
But you're going to do that? Is that what administration's task is at this point?
Yes, I
is
mean,
to-
I see certain, you know, the people that were in favor of changing it claimed that the survey didn't consider certain options, and they, in a couple cases, articulated those options. And so I would look into those options and an associated cost. To give an example, some people suggested maybe the tiers ought to be different than high school at one point, junior high, middle school at another, and elementary, that there ought to be some mixture of those groups. Other people just suggested, what if you move the entire thing a half an hour forward, and everybody's schedule were made in the same order, but it was moved a half an hour later. Pros and cons, I'm not advocating for any of that, but those are the kinds of things that, as you all hear and as we hear, we would come back ready to discuss those alternatives.
With costs associated.
And as long as
With the cost associated with it.
in extracurricullar activity schedules
that.
as well.
You know, for example, one that people say, well, let's just reduce it to two levels. That is completely out of the question, as we pointed out in that last meeting. That's an $8 million cost. But there may be other ways that we'll ask Raul and others to prepare and to be ready to discuss with you.
Okay,
So this item is not nothing. I mean, we're just saying we are going to do this.
right,
Okay.
pretty much.
Let them work out the logistics and come back to it.
But I'm looking at the
Perfect.
first part of October, and if we feel like if that is the only meeting needed, then that's all we need. But I just want to make sure that we have looked at it all, and then we're ready to make that decision.
So Rebecca, I could translate that into action by having Bobby establish a date near the beginning of October for the first one of these, and then maybe a date in December for the first student advisory one.
Yes.
And after your first one on school start times, you may come
After-
back
there
to
might
us
be
and
another
say
one, yes.
there ought to be a second one.
Yes.
okay, so
Then you're going to redo the survey?
Say it again?
You're going to redo the survey after that?
I think there's some decisions that need to be made based on the workshop that we do. There are several unknowns based on data that hasn't been presented that we won't know about until we do that. That's my opinion.
Understood. I know that. But the point is
Perhaps, Jeff,
Well-
that might be one of our actions.
we need to consider that.
I think overall, what this item is about is developing some buy-in, because it kind of assumes that the board wants to move forward with this, or rather that there's enough of us that want to move forward with this that it needs to be considered at a deeper level, and going to the public and just kind of making the case and saying, you know, hey, these are the pros, right? This is why we're discussing this in the
But
first
it's not
place.
just, we're not just doing
Right.
it for the sake of doing
And
it.
so that's where we are with that. So Sean, I wanted to ask you, you said you were not in favor of, you know, a campaign to go out and say, and I guess push the start times. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, if you're going to call it a workshop, as a board, just like a budget workshop, we work through these items and discuss these items. But, you know, you just said it a second ago. We want to bring them here and talk about the pros. You got to talk about the cons. I mean, you know, again, unless we want to
I think
get
we
into
heard
this
the
again
cons
tonight.
all last week.
You know, you've got to
Last
be
month.
open-minded in looking at this. And if you're going to have a true to honest workshop, I mean, you've got to inform the public, let the people that are for it come and talk, let the people that are against it come and talk, and look at all options. I mean, you got to distinguish what the point of this workshop is. Is it to convince people, or is it to truly find a better option? Because if there is a really good option, then that's fine. But we as a board, just like any other decision we make, can look at those options and make a decision. If we want to workshop it and have the public come and speak about it and give their opinion, then that's, to me, something completely different, you know? I mean, but it shouldn't be a campaign for us to go out and convince people that this is the best deal. I mean, we were elected to govern the board, and we make the decisions. If we want to workshop it and we feel that there's a good option and we approve it, then that's what needs to happen. I mean, we're not out on a bond campaign trying to convince people that we need more money. I mean, this is an item that we as a board can vote as a member for or against based on the data that the administration has given. And as Jeff said, to this point, the survey that came back, regardless of if it was perceived as swayed one way or another, you know, parents overwhelmingly didn't want the change, and there was not another option on the table. So until administration brings us another option that we're favorable for, or we have costs that are associated that we can understand this, then, you know, you have to make a decision based on that. And you don't have to make a decision, but you need to make a decision whether you're going to do a workshop or we're going to bring this back as an agenda item saying we want to change the start time to this, and here's the cost associated. We talk it out just like we're doing right now, and we make a decision. I don't think we should have a campaign that goes out to convince people that this is the best thing for their kids.
I understand the fact.
Agreed.
I understand what you're saying, but on a thing this big, I think one of the issues that came out and at the last meeting was that I think we just need to be more clear about why we're doing this, right? And that would be my.
There's been no open. You're right, but there's been no open dialogue between us and the public. Period.
And so and more along the lines of, you know, I didn't read all the studies that are referenced in the AAP's policy statement, but I've read the policy statement, right? So I understand why we're behind this, right? And so I'm honestly, frankly concerned that there's just nobody's hair is on fire, right, in order to get this done, right? And I don't know what kind of, you know, I understand we can tell administration, you know, go this way or go that way, right? But I think if the team of 8 is not on board, it's going to make this really.
Well, let me ask you this, Charles.
Right.
Is there an option on the table right now that you support?
Out of what was in the survey, no.
Okay, so then how can you go out to convince people and run a campaign or talk to people about changing something that you don't support or have something tangible that you can say, okay, this is what we're going to change to?
That's the purpose of that workshop.
Here's what
and-
Well, I
and
understand
discussion.
that.
I'm not-
But
I'm
again,
not-
we don't have those options in front of us. So then what are you saying? It's you bring them here to say it's okay that we talk about moving the school start time for these reasons. Now we're going to come back and figure that out later.
think we have to
here's what we're
establish the
for.
facts.
I'm here for the best thing for kids. Let's figure out how to make that happen. And that's something I can get behind. And the research clearly indicates from the AAP, and you read the literature, and it's been validated several different times that there are biological benefits for our students to make this happen. Here's what I can get behind. Now, how do we make it the most feasible for us?
But didn't we do, I guess my point is, last meeting, if you go back and watch it, we sat here and said, we don't disagree with Lance. We want to make children have longer sleep times, better for their health. We said all that. And then when we left, we said, we're going to look into it further of what we can do.
Right.
So,
That's what we're doing.
exactly. And so the workshop would be for Dr. Kelly to come back from his staff with a recommendation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is that where you're?
But it's an open. But we're inviting the public to come
And talk
listen
to
and
us.
have an open dialogue to discuss it.
But see, we're talking about two different things.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, two different things.
But
we're
if you
talking
don't
about two
have a
different things.
recommendation, how can you ask them to talk about it? If you, what I'm saying is, right now, if you, based on the current recommendation that was given at the last survey, if you're asking them to talk about that, the majority of them said no.
Okay.
If you come back with a different recommendation, say, okay, we're going to move everything up half an hour. Now let's discuss what that looks like. But you got to have that recommendation or that data from Dr. Kelly, even to have that workshop with the public. Otherwise, you're now just discussing how healthy it is for a kid to sleep in later. And that's a totally different discussion that
Maybe
you may
that's
want
the
to have.
conversation that needs to happen.
Well, if I can bridge the different perspectives, I guess what we would do is we would allow between now and that October date, anybody that thinks they have a better idea to give it to us in concrete. We would explore that option in addition to anything we can think of ourselves and present those options, pros, cons, allow people to interact with us
So
and
is that
see.
Is that something we would, let's just say, okay, let's spitball here. So you're saying that if somebody has a better plan, okay, Goose Creek ISD just approved theirs already, okay? 3 high schools. To move to 8:30 for high school start time. So whatever they decided, how they ever got there, if they did theirs, Houston ISD's moving theirs, whatever theirs looks like, and maybe somebody else's I don't know, and then y'all research that and say, you know, that's not those two options may not be that may work for us. Would y'all present that to the public and say, this is what we're gonna be talking? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
If we have options on the table
Okay.
at a workshop
That's what
and
we're
we're
talking about.
bringing the public in to discuss it, and I'm okay with
That's
that.
what we're
What I'm
talking
not okay with is going out and advocating campaigning
No,
that school
I'm
start
not-
times
I'm
are
not
later
for
and
that
that
either.
I mean, we know that it's better for them to sleep later. No, I don't want to spend the administration's time out doing road shows to prove that it's better. We know the data shows that it's better. What I want are options on the table, bring the public in, let's have a back and forth.
I agree.
Well, we also, at the same time, we sent out a survey that was broadcast to everyone. And we, regardless of what time, day, night we have this workshop, we're never going to see the breadth of individuals that responded to the first survey. So it only makes sense that we go back out to the public with a survey.
Agreed.
Would you support these different start times? Because we have to
after
offer them
we've
all
discussed
options.
the options, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can say, okay, these seem
yeah, I
feasible
agree.
based on the actual, respondents in our workshop.
Yeah, they're not
It's just-
mutually exclusive.
I get it, but we're
I
kind of
think we're all talking about the same thing here.
We're kind of moving out of the trustee function and kind of
I agree with
governing
that
by
too.
public opinion. Like, I get what you're saying,
Right.
right? I
Well,
get
we-
what you're saying.
We did
I
the survey to
understand.
begin with for
I-
that reason to begin
to
with.
understand what people thought, right?
Yes.
And people did not like the
We
options
have
that
to
were
stay
presented
down
to
the
them,
same
right?
path. And you're saying that you don't like the fact that the public doesn't like your opinion, so you want to go and do it again.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's what it sounds like.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay. I'm not
But-
putting words in your mouth. I'm just
Well,
saying
yeah, but
that's
no,
what I heard.
No, that's not what I was. That's not what I was meaning. But what I'm saying is that at some point in time, y'all gonna have to make a decision, and you can't hide behind.
I'm ready to make a
You
decision.
know what I mean? You got to step out and say this is what's best for kids. Now,
Right.
should we have done the survey in the first place?
That could have been
Anyway,
my bad.
So
We did.
I
but,
know.
I mean,
Do a survey. It's never going to be perfect.
Right.
Never.
Someone's going to say it was worded this way. Someone was going to say it should have asked it this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And again, here we are. We didn't like, or people, as Dr. Kelly said, didn't like how the survey was out there. So they didn't like the results. So here we are again saying, what can we do differently now to make this work?
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say, okay, the survey was imperfect and there are other options we didn't think of. Okay, so we'll research those options and we'll give the board members and anybody else the opportunity to say, have you thought about this? We'll bring the costs and a rationale and pros and cons for those ideas specifically to the workshop, and then give the public a chance, pro and con, to react to those things or to give their own ideas. And then you have a second meeting, it sounds like, in the fall, to see if there's been progress. My only caution, and I've said to Rebecca over and over again, is, the board should reflect the community, and if you all
Agreed.
are not able to change the mind of the community, you should be very careful about going ahead and doing it anyway.
Well, then you get into the whole conversation of like, then Sean's right? Like, then we're actively campaigning for a policy position. I think what Charles once said to me a long time ago, and I'll paraphrase, it wasn't exactly, but basically, our function as a trustee is not necessarily to follow the will of the people, it's to do what's right for the people.
That's true.
Even if they don't agree with it at the beginning,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
So I just like to keep that in mind, that's under all of this, it's foundational.
yeah, I mean that was given to me by Virgil, right? He
Yeah,
said,
And me.
are you a trustee or are you a representative?
And you are
Now
a
I
trustee.
understand clearly that if you do not represent your community, effectively, you will no longer be a trustee, right? But you're going to get put into these situations where it's like, okay, this is not popular, but this is right, And so now I'm just kind of really worried about. I'm worried about buy-in from the board. I'm worried about, like I said, and I really want to avoid mishandling the issue.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And I'm just kind of concerned
so-
about, whether or not we're giving administration clear signals on what to
Huh?
go for.
I can.
Well,
I can
so,
feel
so,
it.
So it's
And I know you
counting
can-
heads.
yeah.
so
I know I can. I mean,
I just don't think, when we discuss school start times, and this will be the third time we've talked about it. The first time we talked about it was 2 years ago, and everybody says, if it ain't fixed, don't break. I mean, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But there was no other options out there. And much like what was given in the survey, it was the only options. But how is it, and I keep going back to this, how is it, as a former coach, to be a better offense or defensive coordinator, to be a better team, I could beg, borrow, or steal other ideas from other people and become better. Now, why can't we as a district do that? Why can't we look at other districts and see, how are you doing it? And how are y'all getting it done? And that's my point.
Yeah.
Whether it's on them to do that, whether we have a workshop, I don't care. Either way. It's just, we were given this, for the past 2 times I've asked for school start times, we were given very narrow things. It wasn't, it was a survey that was this way. Not everything was much like the calendar. Not every option was exalted. And that's all I'm asking. Can we beg, borrow, and steal from other districts that are doing this currently, right now? Currently, and everybody's moving toward it. Well, I'll get off a
I
soapbox.
just don't think as an organization there's enough buy-in to move forward. Right. The question I asked at the end
on
of
this?
on this.
Okay.
And you know, I'm just from the no on changing the school start times. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just an honest.
I feel like if administration felt passionately about it, we'd be. I mean, not to.
No, I get it. I get it. Right.
That's
But what we talked about was, okay, why we're doing this. I kept going back to why. Okay. Yeah. See, Crystal, you.
We're not persuading the public,
I
we're
don't-
persuading you guys.
And so and when we
that's
talked about it,
combination.
we talked about it, right? And at the end of the meeting, I actually apologized for posing this question the way I did. I said at some point we're going to have to figure out, are the health benefits that are supposed to come from this thing worth it? Because this is not going to be easy. This is not going to be, let's go, this is not going to be easy, right? And I just didn't get the feeling of buy-in, right? And so anything we push is going to be forced, right? And I don't think that you're going to get the results that you're looking for. Now,
yeah, I agree.
you know what I mean? And so I'm
So, but wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm
So the
listening.
survey, when it came out,
Mhm.
I have an elementary kid.
right,
I don't want my elementary kid getting on the bus at 6:05.
right,
So I'd vote against that immediately.
yeah.
Done.
Wait, so you're saying there's not
That
enough
was the only
buy-in
option.
from the public or buy-in
That
from
was the
board?
only option.
It's not a buy-in from
Board, administration.
the team of,
public.
yeah,
Team of 8.
the team of 8. The team of 8. I don't think we buy into the situation.
Buy-in to the situation of changing the start time,
Right.
pushing it back. Okay.
Right. I don't think so. And I understand that we as a board can vote 4-3 to do anything, right? But having buy-in is just different, and I just don't feel it, right? And I don't perceive it. There's nothing that makes me think it's there. And I think maybe, I don't know why. I won't make a guess why, but that's just my gut, right? We can lead, and so then that goes back to what you were saying. I think that, I mean, at a certain point, there needs to be kind of a messaging that says, hey, this is why we're looking at this. This is why it's good, you know? And so kind of to generate that buy-in, and we probably need to start internally first before we go to the public.
I agree. I feel like
You
if
know?
we don't, we aren't on the same team with the board and administration, then
Right.
this is pointless. Because what's happening is it's not just public opinion, it's a conflict between the
Yes.
intentions of both parties. And if we're not on the same page, then whatever we present is gonna look broken and nothing's gonna move forward.
So-
And
so
the
that's
foundation
exactly-
Or
is
So-
if
so
it
that
moves
brings up-
forward,
right.
it's gonna be terrible, and it's
And when we
gonna,
talked
we're gonna be right
about-
back here in 2 years.
Yeah, we
chasing
talked
it back.
about why.
even if we did move forward and move the start
But-
times.
And then we'd be right back here in 2 years, moving it back.
I got into some conversations that were extremely passionate about that high school start time. And we heard what our principals, let us know that, I mean, they were talking about if these times leave, I'm going to lose a whole bunch of teachers, right? And, I mean, for the
They were talking about
discussion,
this
But
year.
Charles,
well, for the
once again,
discussion,
y'all
for
are
the discussion to
failing,
go that way is just shocking to me.
But
right?
what you're failing to see, and I asked several principals that I know
Mhm.
in our district, and I said, well, what about 7:50 high school start time? They're, oh, that's much better than 8:45 or 8:30, or they were like, oh, that's cool, we can get everything done then. But it was never proposed, and that's my point is, that was never given to them. So they're going to sit up there and they're going to tell you, I don't want to change the start time because I don't want to go to 8:30. But
Right.
what if we get closer?
Right. Right.
And that's my point is get closer to the goal because that was never presented. So they were given, either point A or point B, and that was it, and that was a survey. So sure, they're going to say that.
So
I mean,
that's
I've been in it, you know, that's what they're going to say.
So I would disagree with you, Charles, in the sense of that the core of the problem, which is more sleep and later start times, I think the board would agree. From a standpoint of action items from the report that was given, basically what Lance is saying, there was no action item, alternative solution, or cost that was in that report. So there was no decision made. So I think the point where we're at now is we're spinning our wheels with this discussion, but I think we need viable options like pushing half an hour up. How does that affect bus routes, school? Then we can make a decision or have a discussion to make a decision. But I don't think this board administration disagrees with the core competency of the fact that kids get more sleep. It's better for the students. It's where is the solution and where's that recommendation? As Lance is saying, if these are our only options, then nobody took any action items to move that forward because it wasn't a good option.
I understand.
And when we left that meeting, we left it in that we would continue to look at what viable options. Where we are tonight is the direction that administration needs to take away is we need to go back, look at pushing half an hour ahead.
Give us a couple of viable options.
What
to
costs are
discuss that.
associated with it, and then have that discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, we're going to continue to sit here and argue
It'll
about
be the same
whether
conversation over and over
who
and
agrees
over
with it, whether we disagree with it, what reasons. But until there's a viable option sitting in front of us to look at,
So we're only having these meetings if we have a number of proposals from the administration. Is that what?
Well, or just
Sounds-
I did
yeah,
pretty
that-
much.
what I would say, Mike, is that anybody that wants to, including board members, would submit to us, have you thought about this, dummy? Because that's kind of what we got after the survey from the people who didn't like the results. You guys overlooked some fantastic scenario that we, could do. All right? Give it to us. And we'll look at it, and we'll identify the costs and so on. To Lance's credit, 2 years ago he told me, John, can't you just move it up 15 minutes or 30 minutes? That may turn out to be, if you're absolutely convinced to do this, that may be an option that is appealable to a much wider variety of people than switching all these times.
But just for the record, we are having these meetings in October and then one in November.
I think so.
Depending upon.
Hey, Rebecca,
Word.
can we just, if they come back to us next month, are we having a meeting?
No.
Not in July.
Well,
No, and there's a lot, they have to close out the year, they have to get started for the new year, so.
what I hear is the majority of our board members are still interested in perhaps pursuing a change. So I see my role before October is looking at any, soliciting and looking at any options, putting out the costs, and then together with Rebecca, putting out an agenda for people to interact with us and for us to put out those
Yep.
options and costs.
Yes.
But hold on, let me ask you this. Before October, should we have it presented to, before we have an open workshop like he's saying, we all kind of be on the same page? Hey, we need to really look into this, as opposed to saying, okay, wait till October, or there's not enough time in between to come back in September and
Well,
say,
if there's options and you're sending them to Dr. Kelly, then he can send them out to all of us.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Okay.
I mean, so that way we would get, yes.
So this workshop may or may not happen.
No, the workshop is gonna happen.
For sure.
I'm having a vocabulary issue, right? This is
Okay, go ahead.
semantics. Okay, if we talk about a workshop, all our workshops are open, right? So
Yeah, but we're gonna have it out here.
Workshops. We're talking about a workshop here on the
Part-time.
on
Or
the
out
start
there
time.
or whatever.
So we're just talking about workshop and start times, right? And then, so that's
And
nothing.
Hope, and
There's no
public
other topics. That's
I
what
know that
started
they're
this
open
conversation.
and
But
But we don't-
on top of that, are you also talking about starting kind of a tradition of having town halls twice a year?
Yeah.
Right. So what we're talking about, but this is not going to be one of those
Nope.
town halls, right? And so this is not going to be like the campaign to go out and hey,
No.
start times are
No.
good, right? Because that's not what
No.
we don't see that as productive, which I agree with, right? So we're talking about having a workshop on the
Yes.
start times.
right.
Well, Charles, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
Yeah.
Normally, a workshop that we've held has
Mhm.
been the board works on something and the public is free to listen,
Right.
but they don't really participate.
This,
What Rebecca is suggesting is that,
they can give their
yes,
2
we
cents.
will,
We can
we
listen
will
to.
give options and talk about things, but in turn, we'll also, at this workshop, if that's what we call it,
Okay.
allow the public to come forward and say, this is what I think, this is, you know.
Okay. Okay, but again, like you said, it's important to have concrete options about.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's
Fair enough.
That's what you got that?
Yes,
Okay.
now that we solve that.
Yes. All right, let's go on to our.
Well, you know, Sean, I'll go back and make one more comment about what you said. I just don't think that the research is front and center on this item, right? I just didn't get the feel that, you know, very many people were familiar with it, that it had been widely read or disseminated, and I just didn't get that feeling, right? And so that's why I didn't think we had, you know, the buy-in to move forward with, you know, even directing administration to go back and come up with any more options.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, and I guess I just say that as a discussion.
I have some
point.
ideas to discuss with.
So you're
Okay.
saying buy-in from a perspective of, well, the board's kind of split on the
getting
idea.
the information
Let's just
out
table
there.
it.
I mean, kind of like, yeah, you know, yeah. I just don't see. It's like there's not a strong like we gotta get it done. You know what I mean? I don't see that, and that concerns me. Is what I was saying. That concerns me.
I don't think there's an issue. I don't think there's anyone here saying there's an issue looking at the viable options. I don't think there's anyone here that says they don't want to have this workshop. I think the issue is I'm saying personally, speaking for myself, I'm not going to go out and do campaigns to change the start time. I mean, I don't go out and campaign to change the budget. I don't go out and campaign when we decide on,
Right.
you know,
I agree.
everything else. So why are we going, if you want to individually, I think, go out and educate people, that's something you're passionate about, but we don't do it on everything else. You know, we govern the board, as you said, as a trustee, and we don't go out and make our decisions based upon, you know, what the public is telling us to do. Now, do we take their input? Do we get their emails? Absolutely. Does it factor in how we make our decision? Absolutely. But, I mean, I'm here to do what's best for the district, but I'm not going to go out and campaign this agenda item. And will I have a viable discussion with the public? Absolutely. Will I look at the options, and if I support it, will I vote for it? Absolutely. And I don't think anyone here is saying.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, and the other thing too, kind of to your point is I think that we have to govern the way that we feel that we need to govern, right? We have to go with our heart and make good decisions. But when we start talking about pushing, let's just assume we're going to push everything out an hour, right? I think that's what Lance was alluding to. Just push it out an hour. Well, you're dealing with a lot of different things, or a certain amount of time. You're dealing with not just, you know, the start of school, buses, things like that. You're dealing with babysitters. You're dealing with, you know, individual, work times and things of that sort. There are so many outside factors associated with that. We can't really always take all those things into consideration. It's almost impossible. But it has to be realistic.
Wait, so you're saying that we shouldn't meet with, or we shouldn't hear from the.
We should absolutely hear from the public and have a workshop on this. I agree with that. And I agree that all the education and all the information is viable. But
Okay, so I think we're clear.
We're clear
We
on
move
what's
ahead.
happening. Yes.
Yeah.
Workshop in October.
Right.
Options. In the meantime, if you have ideas, send them to Dr. Kelly.
Yep.
Okay, budget?
Okay, Madam President, we've had at least 2 workshops in May. I don't know if we had a workshop earlier in the year than May. I don't remember. Okay. 2 workshops, and then you had the salary decision at the regular board meeting in May. Georgiani has a PowerPoint to go through the main things. But before we do that, I'd like to know what level of detail does the board desire at this point?
Well, I mean, for my purpose, a good just overview for the public would be great. Although, I mean, we've had, because I think that we are well versed in what's going on. So that's just my 2 cents.
Agreed.
Any other comments on that? How deep do you want to go into the budget?
Well, let me make a few opening remarks.
Yes, that would be
And
fantastic.
then Georgiani can probe a little further. If I can draw your attention to page 6, which is the notice of the public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. First of all, what we are proposing after the 2 workshops and the regular meeting in May is that we keep the tax rate exactly the same. Now here's the problem. Below that it says comparison of proposed budget with last year's budget. And you'll notice that maintenance and operations sees a 1.07% decrease. Why is that? It is because although local tax values have gone up, the state aid has gone down by a greater amount than the local tax values have gone up. And that is a bad problem for all school districts in Texas, but particularly for us. Debt service goes up in terms of the amount that we're paying, but it's covered within the current rate and our fund balance for that purposes. If you look at the next, the point of what I'm going through is to show you that you are in this difficult situation because the state has not kept up its share of funding for Texas public education. So if you look at the next chart, total appraised value and total taxable value, you'll see that the one area that went up was total taxable value of all property. So we saw an increase there. Hallelujah. But the problem is that the state turns around and says, well, then we'll give you significantly less revenue as a result, and that's what hurts us. Go below that to comparison of proposed rates with last year's rates. I've never had this situation before. If you'll look at the local revenue per student, the column there on the right, and the state revenue per student, those 2 columns, you'll see that the proposed rate that we're offering is less money per student than the rate to maintain the same level of maintenance and operations revenue as last year and last year's rate, what it would generate. Again, why is that? Because the state is not doing its fair share. So, although in the last part of that page, the comparison of proposed levy with last year's tax levy on average residence, the average market value of a residence in Pearland increased by about $4,000. The average taxable value increased by $8,000. And so we're keeping the rate the same, but the actual impact on the average house is about $10 per month that they'll be paying in taxes as a result of this. And then you see at the very bottom the fund balances, and I won't go into all that. So my point for going through all that laboriously is that it is the state that needs to get going, and we are doing a heroic job to try to live within our means, decrease our budget accordingly to make up for the lack of state funding. That's all I've got to say about that. I recommend that we, since the last meeting, Georgiani can go into greater detail, but we obviously fit in the 3% raise that we've advocated. In addition to that, we heard strongly from the board that they wanted STAR incentive pay and AP incentive pay reestablished, and there were a few other things. Those are the only changes from May till this meeting.
I was going to ask specifically that. Let's talk about anything that's changed, because I see we have a planned $8 million hit to reserves, and I think the last time we talked, we were somewhere less than that, 6.8.
Well,
It was about $1 million less.
$1 million less, okay.
So $450,000 of those are the STAR and AP incentive pay that was reinstated. About $200,000 is reduction statewide. The state reduced the indirect cost ratio, so we're going to receive less than we were expecting for SHARs. Of course, the budget is a moving target, but now that we know about it, we're not going to budget for those $200,000 in revenues. Then, of course, we took very deep cuts across the board, especially with utilities. But looking at the water cost has been rising tremendously. So we increased that part of the utilities, a little bit on the phone, so about $250,000 there. Then the new positions that were added, they were budgeted at the minimum. Well, normally you don't bring people at the minimum, so I pushed that up a little bit because if you get somebody with years of experience, they're going to get paid a little bit more than minimum.
So then why do we would do a workshop like that? Why do we budget at the minimum? I mean, you know what I mean? that's frustrating to me to see
is.
to
It-
say we're going to budget at
that's
the
not-
minimum, knowing that we're going to come in and hire higher. I'd
Well,
rather
that's
see
not- that's not the bulk of
more
it.
realistic numbers.
Right.
But Sean, that's really my fault.
It's-
That's a long-standing practice that I needed to change. And finally, I told Georgiani, we need to be more realistic
Mhm.
about that. It wasn't an intentional error, but we've just always done that, and instead of looking at the midpoint of salaries.
I think because it changes the way we make a decision. I mean, if you ask us
Yeah.
for 7 staff members and you give us the minimum number
Agreed.
versus 8 staff members at a higher number, it's going to change.
Agreed.
I mean, it's
You're right.
I should
hate
have
to say the word
spotted this.
misleading, but I mean,
And by no means have I tried to mislead you.
I know, I understand. I'm not, that probably the wrong word to use, but again,
I
it
sh-
personally changes the way I would make a decision on a budget if I knew if at 7 members at a minimum versus 8 at a, or you
Well,
know.
the difference on the amount, probably you wouldn't have made a different, decision based on that.
I understand.
So here's I just went to, since we're talking about additional personnel, the 771 is the number that we're used to seeing for those 11
Yes.
additional FTEs.
Yes.
And so
It's
the
moved
district
to what?
budgeted now 900 grand for that.
That's
So
130
roughly
more.
$130,000 more to get to the. Okay, well, is it midpoint or is it high? Or is it just
Midpoint.
midpoint? Okay.
Good point, David.
Of course, benefits associated with
Okay.
it
Okay.
and such. So it
So-
has been a practice to budget at the minimum, and that's what we're changing. now.
Okay.
Virginia,
Well, let's just carry that forward to next year so that
Yes.
we can, whatever's
In
new,
fact,
Yes.
every
all of this
decision
good stuff
on all
will-
that.
yeah. Okay.
Georgiani, do you know where our, I think you added, 200,000 for the water?
Yes.
So do you know where our primary utilization is?
So I haven't had a chance to dig that deep.
It
It's
still says 17.
The reason I ask is because $200,000, we could put a well in.
right. Well, I don't know. I don't know about. I don't know if construction has anything to do with the.
But the water rate's been increasing across the city. I
Right.
mean, it's a significant increase to everyone. So
Yeah,
I expected
I
that
was
was gonna
surprised.
happen to
Well,
us, the
yeah,
school
but
district
that
utilities.
doesn't mean that we don't have options, I mean, look at Katy. Katy has water wells for everything, right? They don't use city water. So, I mean, if it's gonna be a $200,000 a year increase for whatever it is, we got increases too at home. But I don't have the luxury of putting a water well in.
But I do want to emphasize that all the utilities, everything was deeply cut. So this budget is pretty much bare to the bones.
And when you say cut, you mean we gave
It was a more realistic approach.
more realistic
We
approach to
looked
numbers?
at
Okay.
each different line item.
Okay.
We looked at the historic expenditures. Try to do our best with projecting for next year. As you see, fuel prices are rising. There's other costs that are rising. And so water is one of those things that we decided to go ahead and increase a little bit.
I have a question on a particular line item, and I referenced this a little bit in the questions before the board meeting, but it's the line item or the expenditure 95. It's on page.
Function 95,
Yes.
that's the JJAEP.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I think I'm misunderstanding kind of the categories here, and maybe you can educate me. So the 16-17 actual was what we spent in that area
In that year.
in that year.
In that function.
The 17-18 amended budget, when was that amended
So
budget?
the 17-18 budget, it really hasn't changed. The amended the total amount, the amended and the original budget, it stayed the same. We did move a little bit of money within functional areas, from one function to another. About 2 months ago, this board meeting, we moved a couple of functions as well, and that is because we're not allowed to spend more in any function unless you give us a board approval. And so it was minimal changes. Now with the JJAEP, we've been fortunate that we haven't had to use them, but the budget was always the same amount each year. So that amount that you see there on the 17-18 is not what we're going to spend.
In other words, Crystal, there was a highly inflated number for that that represents years ago, and it was kept in the budget every year.
Yes.
She looked at actual and said, I'm not going to reduce the amended budget for 2017-18, but I'm going to tell you that for 2018-19, we're not going to need that amount of money.
Right.
So why wouldn't we have amended that in the same, when, like, in the consent agenda, there was an, and I apologize, I went to the restroom and that happened so fast that I didn't get a chance to ask that question then, but why would we have not amended that category to accurately reflect our current spending in that area?
I mean, it'd be very difficult to get into the business of doing an amendment, you know.
Yeah, let me help with that, Crystal. The auditors gig us if we don't have enough money in a particular function. So we always make sure that we have as much money or more money than we need by function.
Sure.
And so for an amended budget, she's not going to come in and, unless she has to, and reduce functions to show actual costs. She may move money around just to make sure that every function is not exceeded.
Out for
Right.
spending in those areas.
Yes.
It's just like this board meeting, you know, we had an item in the consent agenda, and we just moved from one function to the next, but we're not gonna spend the full amended budget.
Okay, so it's not that we're seeing more kids that we're seeing, because to me, this is a marker of issues in our district if we're seeing that many kids needing to go to JJEP.
No.
I mean, if we're looking at a difference between $17,000
So
and
if you were to have
$123,000.
seen your 16-17 budget, the budget would have been the same amount as the 17-18. But the actual was a lot less, which is what we're gonna see this year again.
So even then, if you're telling me that over history, I mean, it's $20,000-$30,000, but if you're saying we're budgeting at 53, then we're still
I cut
budgeting
it $70,000, to be exact.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Board?
Going back to Dr. Kelly, what you were talking about
Yes, sir.
with the state funding and whatnot, we talked about a TRE for this year, and we took that off the table. But I think just general request to the administration that we need to stay ahead of what this budget process and what these numbers are going to look like for next year. And so if we need to talk about, there were a couple things that we talked about. One was the TRE, and then another one from a budget item standpoint was the STAR. Or maybe it was just the AP incentives.
Well, I think
Or
it was,
was just
No, it
maybe
was both.
Was it both
Yes,
STAR
sir.
and AP incentives?
Put those back in?
Those are all back in. But so for next year, if we're going to have a conversation about changing or limiting the amount of those incentives,
We need
to
obviously
know.
we need to have that
oh, I see.
that conversation before, teachers
So
get
that
into that
teachers
school
know.
year.
So a good opportunity to do that is when we bring to you the payment that we're gonna have to pay for the results this year.
No, but I think Charles' point is that
Yeah.
if
Before
teachers
they
start
the
the
school
year,
year,
Right.
the teachers
thinking-
need to know that
okay.
we've had to decrease
Like
the
1920,
amount.
right? So before we get into 1920.
So bring something in August.
If
at the
that's
next board meeting.
your recommendation, right? And if the TRE is a recommendation, because that's something we're going to have to get out ahead of.
Right.
That's a great idea.
So we
Right.
can't
I
have
like
the
that, Charles.
conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to be a part of those discussions in November when they're happening district-wide, rather than coming into the workshop and saying, hey, TRE is here.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're saying,
That's
but,
what I'm saying.
okay.
yeah, I mean, barring a miracle, the state is not going to bail us out with the legislature,
So we'll
and we're
probably
not
end
going
up
to get
having to go to
1,000
it.
new students. So I think the TRE is almost inescapable for next year.
And if you would take us, you may have already done this, and I just didn't hear it. But if you would take us from the delta between the maximum reserve hit last time around was 6.8,
It increased $1 million.
and we went to $1 million.
And
So
that's because, again, of the $450,000, so
Okay.
about half of it was STAR AP.
okay, we put back in the STAR AP.
About a quarter
okay.
of it was utilities. And then the rest was different items, so for example, like we
Well, the
added,
130 for the midpoint
130
of
for
right,
increase.
$15,000 for crisis communication line item that we
Oh, that's
added.
right.
We're bringing the teachers a couple of days earlier, the new ones for orientation,
Okay.
and some other training with, so there was
Okay.
just a couple of items, miscellaneous costs, but the bulk of it was the first three that I,
So we're looking
advise
at
you.
an $8 million deficit.
right, and so that puts us at about
84 days.
4 days, yes, 84 days of fund balance, which is not bad. It's not
not
desirable
great.
to take a big hit you know, but it's more than the 2 months that we're required to have with TEA.
The other thing about those reserve fund dollars is that once they come out, like they're not going back in, right? We're not going to end up with like a
Again,
surplus.
unless
And so
we
that's-
increase our tax rate
and
and we
exactly.
have growth in enrollment,
Exactly.
we are not gonna see
Yeah.
much coming back in.
And I guess my jumping point from that is essentially that this is not sustainable, this budget. I mean,
Not
the
long
hit
term,
to a
not
reserve,
that, the
no.
tax rate, long
So
term,
there's
no.
gonna be
Right.
more cuts.
Right, and I don't know if we
That's how we
can
started.
do more cuts after.
It was very difficult to tell everybody, and, you know, everybody was willing to go ahead and cut the budget. I didn't have many questions. They just did what they had to do, but it's gonna be very tough for them to operate on a 10% cut for them. Because a lot of these departments asked for money during the budget process. So not only did we not grant it, but we ended up cutting it.
Cutting it.
So I know we talked about the impact of the reduction to the campus budgets.
Mhm.
We looked at historically what they spent. That didn't appear to be, that wouldn't result in negative student experiences, you know, that kind of thing. I'm more interested about what you just said about the cuts to the departments.
Mhm.
When you say it's going to be tough for them to operate, how
Well,
do
they
you
might
define
not
tough?
have as much professional development, for example. They might
Okay.
not, you know, replace the computer that need to replace. You know, every department has different needs.
Yeah. Okay.
It'd be difficult to speak to each
Right.
individual one. I can
Yeah.
speak to the business office one, but not.
Okay. Yeah.
We cut ours too,
Right,
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
and we didn't get the position we
And you
requested.
didn't get the
Right.
position you wanted.
Right. So I mean, we understand, but I think on the like Mike, what you were saying about cuts, man, we can continue to make cuts, but it's going to be the kind of stuff we don't want to cut. Right?
Well, you can't cut utilities anymore.
Right,
you
right.
can't
But
cut.
so at this point, you know, we would be talking about. I mean, this is way off. We're talking about positions and
Mhm.
programming, right?
Right.
And so none of that is anything we're trying to touch because, you know, this is, you know, what we think the community, you know, needs. But I didn't have anything else to say.
Well, the other
About your
challenge
office.
that we're gonna have too is that now with the renovations at the different campuses, we're gonna have added square footage.
For
So guess what?
custodians.
You're gonna need added more custodial supplies, you're gonna need more custodians.
I remember
So
seeing that in the past.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be coming up for next year as well.
And, you know, I'm restating the obvious, but the board made the most important decision last month on salaries.
Mhm.
Salaries, as you put in here, is about 84% of the budget. We are just trying to stay competitive on salaries.
Right.
And we are not able to address health insurance, so we're not as competitive as we should be there. So you're left with 16% of the budget, and you're already, you know, cutting us as much as.
Right. And then we say it's about 85% of the budget salaries, but that doesn't include the contracted services for the SROs, for the security guards, which are really in essence personnel.
Yeah.
You know, they're contracted services. So add that and your total payroll in reality is about 90%.
And just to put the TRE, if a TRE was on the table ever, it has to go out in May.
Well, it could go out in either May or, you know, actually,
It could be any month.
it could be
really.
any month as long as you do the prep work up front.
Which is
You
probably
can still
it's
make a
about-
decision
It's about,
to increase the rate and we can still call it TRE.
okay, but it can happen at any time.
say that again, Georgina?
I'm saying that they could still make a
And you know how she,
decision
look how she looked at me.
to increase the rate,
She
and we
looked at
could
me.
still do a TRE for this year.
Oh, okay.
Well, that doesn't mean that we don't have to, we can't plan for it, right?
For next
That's the
year,
point.
Do,
right.
what,
I
what
know
about
we
any-
need to, we
what
need to
about
do
any-
it for next year. I mean, I don't see any way around it for next year.
Yeah. What about anticipated major capital expenses? We have anything?
Well, we cut the buses. We
But I
we
mean,
only
like
have one
for
bus.
existing maintenance and things of that sort.
Well, we normally do budget for in case for, let's say that a chiller goes out. So we do have some money. We cut a little bit of it.
Well, Jeff,
Um,
also there's some flexibility with bond proceeds,
Mhm.
especially as we're coming in under budget for a chiller going out, for example.
Yeah.
Dr. Kelly, if the suite goes over, if the football suite, if the, what is it called? The press box
box.
goes over, we may not have that money. Just want to be clear on that.
Well, we'll have less of it, yes.
All additional money is going to fencing.
But I think, maintaining you informed on a regular basis of where we're at throughout the fiscal year, I think it'll
appreciate
help
that.
you.
Yes, please.
Make a
Yes, that
decision.
would be awesome. I appreciate that. So, you need a motion?
To approve the budget, yes,
Yes.
ma'am. That should be later in your packet there on page 98.
Any other questions, Board?
Well, I would still like to ask for that, 10-year capital outlay. I think we sent the template over
Okay.
several months ago.
You
It
want
will
to comment
help.
on that,
That's-
Georgiani?
That would greatly help in the budget process.
We will work on it.
Yeah, so at least give us an idea.
Even though she's short-staffed, she's gonna work on
Look
it.
at you.
You're
getting
taking the
additional
money and you're
personnel.
asking for more
We'll
work.
just add 2 more hours to the 15
It's
hours
okay.
that we're already working a day. So
Yeah,
No
we
problem.
got it. There's 24 hours in the day.
It's very important.
Right. Okay, is there a motion on the table?
I'll make a motion. Come on, Sean.
What's the motion?
Oh, sorry.
You made the motion, what is it?
Rookie,
Okay, I
rookie.
should be
Page
reading off
98,
one
page 98.
Thank you.
It's okay. She's,
A newbie.
and she's sitting next to
Okay.
So,
I make a motion that the board approves the operating budget for the district's general fund, food service fund, and debt service fund as presented for the 2018-19 school year.
Second.
okay, so there is a motion made by Ms. Carbone and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? So the motion carries 7-4 and 0 against. Thank you for your hard work. I understand it's been, your whole department. And you know what, we really appreciate the staff too. Working on all those cuts, because I know it's not.
Yes, Yvette
Little
has done a
staff.
huge amount of this work sitting
Right.
next there to Georgiani.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you all very much.
I think you all
And
would
thank you,
agree.
staff. We're trying hard to work within our means, but, these decisions aren't easy.
Mrs. Carter,
Appreciate
this
that.
is your first budget, right? Well, for Pearland ISD, this is your first budget.
Yes, with Pearland ISD.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations, you survived process
made
number
it.
1.
You made
Well, I
it.
With
just
us. With us.
We survived the process. Now let's hope we survive
Survive
the
the
year.
Year,
actual budget.
right, there we go. There we go. All right, do we have to adopt the tax
Yes,
rate?
ma'am.
Okay.
Well, we can adopt the tax rate tonight, and that should be simple and
Okay,
straightforward.
so I need a motion.
Let me just say one thing
Okay.
before you make the motion.
All right,
The motion that I've put in your packet is the required one, but I've added a sentence to it as I do every year, because what the state compels you to say
oh, yes,
is
we're
that
raising
it's an
taxes.
increase.
Yes, but it's not.
And it neglects the fact that the state's portion is very much decreased. So I've added that sentence in at the end. That's on page 100 if someone wants to make that motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
And using the appropriate language as prescribed by the property tax code to approve the resolution levying an annual ad valorem tax. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of tax rate of 1.4156 per $100 of valuation, which is effectively a 2.53% increase in the tax rate. Furthermore, it's noted that the actual school tax paid on a $100,000 house, for example, remains the same as the amount of tax paid last year.
Second.
okay, so I have a motion made by Mr. Berry and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? I just want to point out that it is not a tax increase to the public. It just has to be worded that way. Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Oh, okay. All those opposed? Okay, so we have 6, 4 being Ms. Carbone, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Gooden, Mr. Berry, and Mr. Botkin, and against is Mr. Floyd. Did you get that, Ms. Dawson? Okay. All right, is that it?
Finished.
Okay. Great. Well, then this meeting is adjourned at 8:57 PM. Thank you, staff, for being here. Thank you, Phil.
What'd you ask?